The movie begins in prison. A prisoner named Adrian Frank, who was accused of stealing €1,000,000, shares a cell with a man named Jean-Louis Moore, and who was imprisoned on charges of harming a minor. One night, 3 male prisoners came to Adrian's cell, where they were deliberately harassing Louis. Once they entered, they asked Adrian to come out, so he went out and stood in front of the door. It seemed that the men paid money to the warden to allow them to enter. But Adrian could not stay standing like this while hearing their voice, so he decided to stop them and fight them all and help Louis. As a result of the fighting between them, the guards managed to stop them, and the fighting ended. The next day, Adrian's wife and Louis's wife came to visit them. During the meeting, Adrian's wife asked him about the place where he hid the money, but he did not tell her because he never trusted her. Adrian's wife took her daughter with her because she missed her father so much, but he got angry with her because he did not want his little daughter to see him in prison. Despite his anger, he couldn't hide his longing and immediately embraced her. While the wife, Louis, was telling him that his lawyer was doing his best to get him released as soon as possible. Especially since the victim's family, which filed a lawsuit against him, dropped all its claims. Later in the prison, while the prisoners were watching the show that takes place every month, Adrian was among them, and suddenly he was attacked by another inmate and threatened to tell him where he hid the stolen money because he will be released soon. So he wanted to take the money from him, but Adrian was not willing to tell anyone where the money was. So the man hurt Adrian and passed out, then he was transferred to the prison health clinic. Adrian remained unconscious for 3 days. When Adrian regained consciousness, Louis was sitting next to him, telling him that he had been released. Because everyone has dropped the charges against him. He thanked him for helping him earlier. He gave Louis his phone number and offered to help him if he needed anything. Before leaving the room, Adrian asked for his help to meet his wife and told him that the money he stole was hidden in his late father's grave. Later, before leaving, Louis went to the bathroom to collect the remaining hair on Adrian's comb. It turns out he took him for his later crimes. A few days later, the former police chief, Manuel, came to visit Adrian, explaining that he came because he knew that Adrian was in the same cell as Luis. And he wants to get information about Luis. Adrian tells him that he was not very close to him and believes that he is just an ordinary and innocent person, but Manuel denies that. He says Luis is a serial killer and can act like a pure and innocent person in front of his victims. Manuel knew this because he once tried to save a victim from a fire deliberately set up by Luis, and he tried to arrest Luis. But until now, he did not have any strong evidence after hearing Adrian, so he did not believe, especially since he had entrusted the safety of his wife and daughter to Luis. On the other hand, a police officer named Claire is conducting an operation to arrest a drug dealer. And she was disguised as a uniform to hide her identity. She confirmed the man and then immediately ordered her team to set up an ambush. At that time the drug dealer was arrested and the man was easily defeated by Claire, who was in the bathroom on set. At the same time, Adrian was confused and worried because he still thought about the safety of his wife and daughter. And he was doing his job as usual when the prison guard and 3 inmates came and deliberately threatened him because they were behind the money he stole. Adrian got into a fight again. But fortunately, he managed to beat them up and escaped, disguised as a guard. On the other hand, Louis and his wife were wandering in search of the girl who would be their new target. Louis saw news about Adrian's escape from prison, but his wife was worried because she was afraid that Adrian would know what they were doing. As for Louis, he was confident that Adrian would not harm them, so it turned out that they had kidnapped Adrian's daughter. At that time, the Wazian police chief asked her to find Adrian and arrest him. At first, she refused because she was solving a drug gang case with her team, but he forced her to do so, so she had no choice. At that time, Adrian arrived at his home to meet his wife and child, and found the house empty, so he thought they had gone somewhere, so he left a message for them that he would look for them soon. At that time, Claire and her team surrounded the place. At first, they did not find Adrian, but after she found the message, she searched the area again, and found Adrian, pointing her weapon at him, then asked her colleague for help. But Adrian manages to escape by jumping out of the window onto the express train. In the evening, Adrian went to his father's grave to check the existence of the money, but unfortunately he did not find anything. Instead, he found his wife's body. Which means that Lewis was the perpetrator. He felt very sorry for his wife and daughter, and then called Lewis and asked him about his daughter, and he replied that she was safe with him. But if he tries to find her, he will hurt her. After the call ends, Aloys begins to create a fake scene by putting Adrian's DNA on the clothes of the victim he killed. It turns out that Lewis deliberately accused Adrian. The police believe that he was the perpetrator of the crime. Meanwhile, Lewis placed the body in the place where Adrian was hiding. The next day, the police searched the place where he was hiding, and they found the bodies of 2 teenage girls who had been burned. One of the girls was the daughter of a former police officer named Thomas, who they found there, and he was very sad. The police suspect that Adrian is the perpetrator of the crime, but Claire has doubts about this, especially when she learns that Adrian's only crime is theft. At this time, Adrian was going to Manuel's house to find information about Aloys so that he could find him. Although Manuel is retired, he conducted special investigations to find Aloys to imprison him. But he has not received solid evidence yet and has met 2 bodies suspected of being Lewis's victims. It's Lewis's victims, but the DNA on the victims wasn't Lewis's. Then he gave Adrian the phone number he called earlier. After that, Manuel went to the police station and traced the signal to the phone number using their tracking system. While Adrian was at Manuel's house, he suddenly heard the police siren, so he realized that they knew his location, so he decided to escape. He grabbed Claire and asked the police officer to lay down their weapons, then told her that he didn't do it and that the real culprit was Lewis, and as soon as he made everything clear, he immediately ran away. Fortunately, Manuel arrived in time and saved Adrian using his car, and the police fired at him, and Manuel was injured, but he decided to sacrifice himself so that Adrian could escape and gave him Louis' address. Adrian jumped out of the car and used a stolen car. The next morning he went to a pharmacy in the area near Lewis. Remember that Lewis is highly dependent on one type of medication. On the other hand, Claire began investigating all the files related to Lewis, because she felt that Adrian was not a murderer. Elsewhere, while Lewis and his wife were in the market with his son Adrian, a beautiful girl he loved before appeared, and he believed that she would be the next victim. On the way back home, they pretended that they wanted the address of the hospital and asked the girl to help them. At first, she hesitated to get into the car, but she accepted when she saw a child with them, as she thought that they were not dangerous people. But after passing the supposed place, the girl began to realize that she was being kidnapped, then she began to quarrel and managed to flee into the forest. Unfortunately, Lewis was able to find her and kill her on the spot. The next day, Adrian noticed that Lewis had left the pharmacy, so he immediately went to follow him, and after chasing him in the car for a long time, he finally found his house, which was in a very quiet mountainous area. Later, Adrian began to sneak into the house so that he could get his daughter. At the same time, Claire also arrives because she began to suspect him. Adrian felt very relieved when he saw his daughter safe and healthy. Unfortunately, when he was about to escape, Lewis and his wife suddenly appeared and Lewis pointed the gun at him. Luckily, Claire arrives in time, but he manages to shoot her and immediately goes in pursuit of Adrian, who runs to hide his daughter from Lewis. Claire was still alive and immediately hit his wife. At that time Louis was able to find Adrian and then shot him in front of his daughter, but Adrian was still able to stand by holding a tree. Louis directed the gun at him, but he failed to do so. He was killed by Claire. Claire was trying to save Adrian, but Thomas, the father of one of Louis's victims, appeared. And he shoots Adrian, believing that he is the one who hurt and killed his daughter. The next day they go to the river area to find the bodies of Adrian and Louis. Claire manages to find Louis's body. Finally, after 3 months, Claire went to visit his daughter Adrian at the orphanage. The film ends with his son Adrian holding a small piece of paper in the shape of a heart that Adrian had sent.